I think the commissioners have a duty to their constituents to defend at all levels the point of private property. Now, how much you can do with the EPA is an open question. Certainly, we have legal recourse, and I would encourage the commissioners to do everything in their power, assuming that there's a case to be made if it is involving private property. This is kind of an open question as to there's lots of facts that need to be gathered. And as Mr. Trail mentioned, we certainly have appeal processes through judicial and our legislative offices, and I would take advantage of those if we could. But clearly, the commissioners have a duty to the residents of this county.
Thank you. Next question. Do you believe the outlying communities of Lake County are currently being serviced adequately? Why or why not? Richard?
I have not heard any complaints from anybody, and I'm just now entering the race. I've only been doing this a month or so. This is not something that's anybody's ever sprung on me. So when you don't hear any complaints, you assume everything's going as according to Hoyle, I guess. That's my answer.
Thank you. Tom?
I think that I feel that our current commissioners have really done a good job in communicating with our local citizens. I have thought that a good idea would be, where possible, that on a rotating basis, that we might take some of our commissioner meetings out to each one of our rural districts. That suggestion came up in conversations I've had when I was running for the legislature. And I think that commissioners might take a look at that, and working with their staff and others, there may be appropriate times where you can do that, and that certainly would, I think, attract greater participation and input from our citizens out in our rural areas.
Thank you. Next question. How would you prioritize county services, assuming that no increase in revenue is forthcoming? Tom?
I'm going to have you repeat that again.
No sweat. How would you prioritize county services, assuming that no increase in revenue is forthcoming?
You know, I still did not get the last part of that question.
No sweat. I'll read it again. How would you prioritize county services, assuming that no increase in revenue is forthcoming?
Okay. Basically, how do you increase county services with no added revenue coming in?
Prioritize.
Well,
prioritizing.
I think if you're taking a look at the various services that we have duty as a county to provide for our citizens, that you know, there's some that are mandated. Some that are mandated, U.S. government passed through the state. For example, the Indigent Fund, and also our catastrophic funding from the state to help pay legitimate medical costs is one that I think would be already mandated, fairly high priority. We got into those series of services that we might need to reevaluate. I think organizing a local task force to work with the commissioners and looking and prioritizing that would be a very good way of going about it.
Thank you. Richard?
I think there's always going to be a need to prioritize things because there's never enough money to do everything that we want or would like to do. I think that unlike some cities that come to mind, not our city necessarily, but so often when there's funding issues, then the cry is, well, there go the police and fire department. When you prioritize things, you start with the things that are the most important and work your way down. So you don't want the sheriff to disappear. You don't want anybody's safety to be in jeopardy, and you start from there. If you end up with a few potholes, you might have some explaining to do, but that's a lower priority than somebody's safety, unless it's a big enough pothole, I suppose. So I think those are the kind of things that commissioners and anybody in public office has to deal with. There is simply never enough money to go around, so that's just part of the job. You're never going to make everybody happy, but that goes with the territory.
Thank you. Next question. How can the county address revenue shortfalls besides laying the burden on property owners and businesses with tax increases? Richard?
I've always kind of favored a sales tax for that reason. It seems like everybody demands, that lives here demands a good or service, and if you own all bank stock and don't own any land, you could be a Warren Buffett and basically not provide much more money to the community. And it's all falls to the burden of the property owners that take a huge burden. Of course, as a farmer, I'm listening to me cry. But I think the sales tax would be one way to even the playing field a little bit without always asking the property owners to come thundering through.
Thank you. Tom?
I think I would certainly support what Richard said on the sales tax. One of the approaches is that we need to be very prudent managers, and I think our commissioners have. We have a substantial reserve of over $3 million, for example. One of the options often discussed in the legislature that the county, many of the counties would like to have is a local option tax. That's 60% of the citizens would have to vote to approve maybe a quarter or half-cent tax rate. Very specific project within a 5-year period. The legislature has never granted that option yet, but I think we saw the need enough in our county to do that. We'd work with our local legislators to see if they could move that type of proposal forward.
Thank you. How would you support bird business in Layton County? Tom?